What is the inequality of sin, right? Is there a difference between big sins and small sins? Does God care about the small, ordinary, hidden things too? Well, just remember that when you begin to ignore the details, that eventually has repercussions that build up and build up and build up, and that can eventually create losses in the soul. And in Deuteronomy chapter 22, we're going to unpack some of these details, right? Lost property, mixed boundaries, sexual integrity, and the everyday habits that make a people holy. I'll give you one immediate action to turn ordinary life into covenant faithfulness in this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. Okay, so Deuteronomy chapter 22 gathers the practical laws that train Israel's life in the land, returning of lost property, helping an animal in distress, preserving distinction in creation, building a parapet on a roof, dealing with accusations of sexual sin, and protecting vulnerable women and marriage order. The chapter shows that holiness is not abstract, right? It touches neighbors, homes, bodies, roofs, roads, and relationships. Okay, so we're going to read the first 4 verses now. The focus here is going to be lost property and helping a fallen animal. And my question for you to stay engaged is, why does God make me responsible for someone else's lost or burdened thing? Verse 1, you shall not watch your neighbor's ox or sheep straying away and ignore them. You shall take them back to their owner. If the owner does not reside near you, or you do not know who the owner is, you shall bring it to your own house, and it shall remain with you until the owner claims it. Then you shall return it. You shall do the same with the neighbor's donkey. You shall do the same with the neighbor's garment. You shall do the same with anything else that your neighbor loses and you find. You may not withhold your help. You shall not see your neighbor's donkey or ox fallen on the ground and ignore it. You shall help to lift it up. Biblical unlock number 1. Lost property and helping a fallen animal. Why does God care if I see my neighbor's ox, sheep, or donkey and just walk past? The reason why is because covenant love is not a passive action. It is a command, and the command turns kindness into responsibility. If you see what is lost, burdened, or drifting, you must act, right? You must act. Holiness here means refusing indifference. The law trains the people to notice, recover, and restore what belongs to another. And neighbor love in this sense is concrete, not sentimental. Love proves itself in what it does when no one is watching. Okay, now let's read verse 5 to 12. This focus here is going to be on a distinction in dress, creation, roofs, and mixed fabrics. So, my question for you to stay engaged is, why is God so concerned with boundaries and mixed categories? Verse 5, a woman shall not wear a man's apparel, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For whoever does such things is abhorrent to the Lord your God. If you come on a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground with fledglings or eggs, with the mother sitting on the fledglings or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. Let the mother go, taking only the young for yourself, in order that it may go well with you and you may live long. When you build a new house, you shall make a parapet for your roof. Otherwise you might have blood guilt on your house if anyone should fall from it. You shall not sow your vineyard with 2 kinds of seed, or the whole yield will be forbidden, both the crop that you have sown and the yield of the vineyard itself. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey yoked together. You shall not wear clothes made of wool and linen woven together. You shall make tassels on the 4 corners of the cloak with which you cover yourself. Okay, biblical unlock number 2. Everything here is basically a reminder of what we've seen in Leviticus chapter 19, so if you'd like to go check that out, you may do so. The chapter basically teaches that holiness includes distinction. That is to say, Israel is not to collapse categories God has made distinct, whether it be in seed, clothing, or conduct, and the roof law turns that same principle outward. If your house can harm another, you must build for safety. And the boundaries here are not only for purity, they're also about protection. Something else here as well. Why can't you sow your vineyard with 2 kinds of seed? Because of the neighboring Canaanite cultures, which would engage in fertility rituals where they would try and mix 2 seeds together and they thought it was a cultic fertility practice, okay, and God didn't want the Israelites to participate in that same sort of thing. Same sort of idea occurs with the prohibition on wearing clothes made of two kinds of material, like wool and linen woven together. Okay, now let's go to the next set of verses, 13 to 21. This is going to concern a false accusation against a bride and what protects truth when shame and marriage are involved. Verse 13, suppose a man marries a woman, but after going into her, dislikes her, and makes up charges against her, slandering her by saying, I married this woman, but when I lay with her, I did not find evidence of her virginity. The father of the young woman and her mother shall then submit the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate. The father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her, and now he has made up charges against her, saying, I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity, but here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. Then they shall spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. The elders of that town shall take the man and punish him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, which they shall give to the young woman's father, because he has slandered a virgin of Israel. She shall remain his wife. He shall not be permitted to divorce her as long as he lives. However, if this charge is true, that evidence of the young woman's virginity was not found, then they shall bring the young woman out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of the town shall stone her to death, because she has committed a disgraceful act in Israel by prostituting herself in her father's house. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. Biblical unlock number 3. Why is the law so detailed when a husband accuses a bride of not being a virgin? Because public shame can destroy innocent lives. So the law insists on evidence, testimony, and accountability. But before I get into that, it seems very odd and even strange and even deplorable when we view this from our modern contemporary context, right? When we see this, it's like, this is disgusting. Why would they first and foremost, why does he care so much whether the daughter is a virgin, right? And why does he care so much? Why does everyone stone her to death? The thing is, though, Jesus actually responds to this, right? In the New Testament, in John, right? There was a woman who was was in the very act of committing adultery. The Pharisees bring her to Jesus, and the Pharisees say, the law of Moses says that such a woman shall be stoned to death. And then he says, what do you say, Jesus? Jesus stands up after basically drawing in the sand and says, let the first one among you who is without sin cast the first stone. And all of them left because they were all sinful, right? So the idea here is that whilst it is true, you're right, it is true that this is a sin, committing adultery, this sort of thing, right? Losing your virginity before your marriage and stuff like that. This is a sin. However, Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of this law, and this is something that needs to be reiterated. Jesus was confronted with the same questions that we have, and he responded with love and mercy, but not compromise. That is the important thing. Okay, let's read verses 22 to 30. This is going to be the end of the chapter. The focus here is going to be sexual sin, violence, and protecting vulnerable women. And my question for you to stay engaged is, how does God keep both justice and mercy in view? Verse 22. Yes, verse 22. If a man is discovered lying with the wife of another man, both of them shall die, the man who lay with the woman as well as the woman. So you shall purge the evil from Israel. If there is a young woman, a virgin already engaged to be married, and a man meets her in the town and lies with her, you shall bring both of them to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The young woman because she did not cry for help in the town, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. But if the man meets the engaged woman in the open country, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. You shall do nothing to the young woman. The young woman has not committed an offense punishable by death, because this case is that of someone who attacks and murders a neighbor. Since he found her in the open country, the engaged woman may have cried for help, but there was no one to rescue her. If a man meets a virgin who is not engaged and seizes her and lies with her, and they are discovered, the man who lay with her shall give 50 shekels of silver to the young woman's father, and she shall become his wife because he violated her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her as long as he lives. A man shall not marry his father's wife, thereby violating his father's rights. Okay, final biblical unlock. Again, I just want to point out something because this can be a cause for confusion. The law distinguishes in this particular characteristic, or in these particular cases, the law distinguishes between consent, coercion, and opportunity. And the goal in all of this is to protect women from being treated as if their lives and voices do not matter. In the field, force is presumed where rescue is impossible. In the city, the law investigates more carefully. Deuteronomy is not careless about sin and suffering. It tries to guard the vulnerable and restrain predatory power. Now, you may think, well, okay, you just read in verse 29 that, let's say, if a man meets a virgin who is not engaged and seizes her and lies with her, so this is forced, this is not consensual, right? The reason why the man becomes the wife's husband, even though he's a violator, is because it's to protect the woman, okay? In the ancient Near East, women did not have many rights, and in fact, the Bible, I must say, is one of the greatest advocates for women's rights and the equal worth of male and female. But if in the ancient Near East they didn't have any financial safety nets, they didn't have any social security, they needed to have marriage to protect themselves. Okay, let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. Deuteronomy chapter 22, what does it show? It shows that Christ's holiness reaches into ordinary life, whether it be property, safety, boundaries, truth, and sexual integrity. All of these matter to God. In Jesus, we see the one who never ignored the vulnerable, never used shame to manipulate, never blurred the truth for convenience. He fulfills the law, not by making it smaller, but by making it deeper, calling his people to a love that notices, protects, and restores. And we even read this in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 to 20. Paul writes, "Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, which you have from God, and that you are not your own? For you were bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body." Alright, let's go through some practical applications of this chapter now. I think it's important to obviously care for our neighbors, right? Think of one thing that is lost or burdened in your word right now, whether it be a relationship, a task, a possession, or even a person, right? And take one concrete step to help restore it this week. Care for those who are around us. This is the most important thing, to avoid the situations that are present there. And the second thing is boundaries. You need to make sure you have clear boundaries, whether it be in your relationships, your online habits, your home safety, because everyone can become sloppy in certain areas, whether it be safety, truth, purity. And you can make one change very easily, whether it be perhaps you're watching explicit content online. Maybe you can set a boundary, get covenant eyes, get someone to look over your search history and stuff like that. Or perhaps you've been slipping when it comes to relationships, right? Maybe you need to be more firm with some of the boundaries that you need to set anyway. Alright, well, that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This episode we learned that holiness in Deuteronomy chapter 22 is practical. It shows up in how we treat lost things, animals, roofs, clothes, accusations, and sexual boundaries. The chapter repeatedly protects the vulnerable from negligence, shame, and abuse. And boundaries, they're not meaningless rules, right? They preserve safety, order, and covenant identity. And justice requires evidence, restraint, and care for the powerless. Next time, we're going to move into, we're moving from everyday holiness to exclusion, justice, and belonging in Deuteronomy chapter 23. We'll look at how or who may enter the assembly, how the camp stays pure, and why mercy and order keep returning together. You don't want to miss it. So if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate the show and follow. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.